The year was 1884, a time when the world was changing rapidly, when industrial smoke rose over Europe and the ancient stones of Rome still held secrets older than empires. Within the towering walls of the Vatican, amidst golden mosaics and frescoed ceilings, Pope Leo XIII walked the quiet halls of the Apostolic Palace, a man of intellect, prayer, and deep spiritual discernment. He had always been aware that the life of the Church was not confined merely to politics or ceremony, but to a spiritual battle. Invisible to the eyes of men, yet palpable to the heart of those who served God. And it was on a crisp autumn day, under the shadow of history, that Pope Leo XIII experienced a vision so terrifying, so real, that it would reverberate through the liturgy of the Church for generations to come. The story begins as the Pope retired to his private study, a room lined with tomes and sacred relics, the faint smell of incense lingering from the morning Mass. Alone, with only the flicker of candlelight dancing upon the walls, he knelt in prayer, a humble servant before the throne of the Almighty. It was here, in silence and solitude, that the veil between the material and spiritual worlds thinned, as if the very air itself quivered with anticipation. Suddenly, Leo XII felt a chilling presence, a cold that was not of winter, but of something far older, far more sinister. He rose slightly, eyes wide, heart pounding. And then he saw them, vast legions of dark, winged figures, their forms twisted and grotesque, swirling in the unseen corridors of the Vatican. These were not mere shadows, these were demons, spirits of malice and hatred, moving with purpose, their eyes glinting with hatred for all that was holy. They hovered around the sacred halls, whispering lies, sowing corruption, a silent invasion that threatened the very heart of the Church. Pope Leo XIII, though a man of calm intellect, felt a wave of terror sweep over him. The visions were vivid, almost tangible. He saw the diabolical assembly, as if through a veil of fire and smoke, their claws scraping the marble floors, their laughter echoing in a language older than humanity itself. It was a moment that transcended earthly fear, a confrontation with the forces that sought to undo the work of God on earth. Yet even in this moment of horror, Leo XII's spirit did not falter. He fell to his knees once more, tears streaming down his face, and he prayed, not for power, not for vengeance, but for protection, for the intercession of angels, for the strength to shield the faithful from the encroaching darkness. It is said that in this moment, the Pope heard a voice, not audible to the ears but unmistakable to the soul, commanding him to act, to create a spiritual bulwark against the unseen enemy. From that day forward, Pope Leo XIII composed the prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel, a call for divine protection against evil, which he instructed be recited at the conclusion of every Mass. The words were simple yet powerful. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. It was a prayer born of vision and fear, yet also of faith and courage, and it would become a spiritual weapon, a shield for the faithful in an age when the Church felt the weight of growing secularism and internal corruption. But the vision did not stop at prayer. The Pope, moved by the intensity of what he had witnessed, reflected deeply on the liturgy itself. He recognized that the Mass, the eternal sacrifice of the altar, was more than ritual. It was the battlefield where heaven and hell met, where the faithful could draw grace and strength to withstand evil. The reforms he considered were not of structure but of spirit, a reaffirmation that the Mass was the heart of the Church's defense against darkness. As the days passed, the vision stayed with him. In his private chambers, he would recount the events to trusted advisors, describing the demonic figures in precise detail. Their eyes, their movements, the palpable sense of menace they radiated. Some feared he might be overwhelmed by the intensity, yet Leo XIII remained steadfast, believing that what he saw was not a hallucination, but a divine warning that evil was real, that vigilance was required, and that the faithful needed spiritual armor as much as moral guidance. Word of his vision, though never officially publicized, spread quietly among the clergy. The recitation of the Saint Michael prayer became a standard practice, a ritual shield, and a reminder that even in times of peace, spiritual battles were fought unseen. Cardinals and bishops, priests and laypeople, all were encouraged to invoke the Archangel, to remember that faith itself was a weapon against the forces that sought to corrupt and destroy. Historians have since noted the timing of this vision. Europe was at a crossroads, with revolutions, secular governments, and ideological upheavals challenging the Church's authority. Many saw the Pope's action not merely as spiritual, but as a prophetic acknowledgement of the growing battle for the souls of men. In essence, Leo XIII had not only confronted a vision of darkness, but had also provided the Church with a tangible method of defense, prayer, faith, and liturgical vigilance. The Mass itself, already a source of spiritual power, gained a new dimension. Priests, aware of the Pope's vision, celebrated the Eucharist with renewed consciousness of the unseen spiritual forces present. The faithful, inspired by the protective words of Saint Michael, approached the altar with both reverence and courage. What had once been routine became urgent. What had once been quiet became a battlefield of grace. Accounts suggest that Pope Leo XIII experienced a second moment of the vision in private, this time more intense. The demons, sensing the Pope's resolve, recoiled. Yet their menace persisted. The Pope, however, felt an overwhelming presence of the Archangel Michael, a light that pushed back the darkness. It was this encounter that solidified his understanding that spiritual vigilance, prayer, and the Mass itself were intertwined, each a necessary weapon in the eternal struggle between good and evil. As the years passed, Leo XIII's actions influenced generations of clergy and laity. The Saint Michael prayer became widely adopted, not as a relic of fear, but as a living tradition of spiritual warfare, reminding all that faith was not passive but active, that the liturgy was not just ceremony but armor. The Pope's vision, terrifying as it was, transformed the Church from within, reminding humanity that the unseen world matters as profoundly as the visible, and that courage in the face of evil begins with prayer. Yet, beyond the prayer and the Mass, the vision had a more subtle impact. It taught the Pope, and through him the Church, the reality of spiritual discernment. Evil does not always manifest in grand gestures. Often it whispers, infiltrates, and seeks to corrupt quietly. The faithful, warned through the Pope's experience, learn to recognize these signs, to rely on divine aid, and to understand that the spiritual battle is eternal, ongoing, and personal. Even today, visitors to the Vatican can sense the weight of history in those quiet corridors. Behind the walls and the gold, behind the frescoed ceilings and the echoing chambers, lies a story few know fully, that on one autumn day in 1884, Pope Leo XIII saw the forces of darkness moving within the sacred heart of Christendom. And from that terrifying encounter came hope, faith, and a new understanding of the Mass as not just ritual, but shield, sword, and sanctuary. The story concludes with a reflection on courage and vigilance. Pope Leo XIII, in his final years, continued to urge the faithful to remember that the battle between good and evil is not myth, but reality. His vision, terrifying though it was, became a source of strength, inspiring generations to invoke the protection of angels, to engage in prayer with fervor, and to celebrate the Mass with conscious devotion. In that moment, in the silent, shadowed hallways of the Vatican, the Pope had faced the abyss and emerged with a gift for the Church. The knowledge that prayer and liturgy are the front lines of spiritual warfare, and that even the darkest visions can lead to lasting light. Thus, the day Pope Leo XIII saw demons invading the Vatican forever changed the Mass, not by altering its words, but by deepening its meaning, by revealing its true power, and by teaching the faithful that the spiritual realm is as real as the material, and that courage, prayer, raised, and faith are the keys to overcoming the forces that seek to destroy all that is holy. And in every whispered recitation of the Saint Michael prayer, the Church remembers that day, honors the Pope's vision, and continues the eternal struggle, armed with grace, hope, and the protection of the angels.